Hey y'all, this is part 12 of how the Campbell County Juvenile Domestic and Circuit Court helped my son's father kidnap them on September 16th, 2025. So, I had to make the decision between putting my son's mental health in jeopardy or stopping visitation until the next court date. Because I couldn't put in a motion to amend, which is what I originally tried to do. That was my first step, was to try to put in a motion to amend the order and make the judge aware of what was going on. And I, at that point, was hoping that she would do the right thing by my son. They had all gone on about these best interest factors and how it was all in the best interests of the children. And so I really didn't think for a second that she wouldn't take his mental health and what he was going through seriously. I didn't think that for a second. Boy, was I ignorant. I was so ignorant. So I end up typing up a letter and sending it out to the court, to the guardian ad litem, and to my son's father's attorney. Something else I should note is that one of the first things I did when everything started happening with my son and he started having his trauma responses, I reached out to his father and told him what was going on. So after a couple of weeks, he started getting better. He came out of his shell. He started being a little more independent again. We were all allowed to leave the room and sometimes leave the house. He was eating better. His appetite was getting a lot better. And his night terrors started decreasing, and the panic attacks started decreasing a lot, and they weren't as intense when they did happen. He was easier to comfort, and he would self-soothe a lot easier. He did start going to therapy, and the therapist, her interactions with him were pretty minimal. She would just kind of let him play and just talk to me about what was going on with him. So I would tell her all about what had happened those 2 weeks, because they were bi-weekly. So I would tell her about what his behavior had been like. So the hearing comes around November 11th, I believe it was. And I go in unrepresented again because I still have not heard back from Virginia Legal Aid. And I have tried to find attorneys that will work pro bono, but I was actually getting turned down by attorneys not because they wouldn't work pro bono. That was happening a lot, but there were also attorneys who would not even practice in that courtroom. They won't represent in Campbell County because they don't trust the judges there. I started hearing about corruption because of Campbell County's reputation and their firsthand experiences in the courtroom representing their clients. So I was really struggling, so I had to go in there and represent myself again. The guardian ad litem had only visited with the children the one time. He was fully aware of the situation, fully aware of what had been going on with my sons. I had signed waivers for him to communicate with not only his primary care physician, but also with his therapist. And I also signed a waiver for him to communicate with CPS because they were investigating what they could do about the emotional stuff, the psychological issues, the trauma and all that. So I had signed all these waivers. Turns out that was pointless because he could go and get anything that he wanted at any time with or without my consent. So I found that out later on. The judge heard testimonies of my entire family. I gave them the doctor's note from his doctor that's referring him to the therapist, the information to his therapist, and she disregarded the referral to the therapist, disregarded his medical records that had a diagnosis of trauma. And he claimed that I had been ignoring him and refusing for him to see his son for the past year and a half. So he repeated again that he had been trying to see his son for a year and a half, and that I had been flat refusing him, that nobody would let him see his son. Again, that never happened. That played a huge part into what happened next. The judge berated me for halting visitation because apparently, me as a parent, I don't have any rights to do what's best for my kids. I don't have any right. Once the court's involved, I'm no longer the parent. They are. So she told me that because I didn't follow through on the visitation, she was going to punish me. Boy, did she punish me. So my baby had never met his father because his father did never acknowledge his existence. Not once. I asked for a pause in visitation for my son to get the therapy he needs, and then for supervised visitation for my baby because they had never met before. And there was a clear history of abuse and drug use, and he isn't safe to be alone, especially with the baby. She said, no, I'm not going to do that. What I am going to do, though, is order visitation for him every single Saturday from 10 to 12 at the mall. For the first month. Second month, he gets them 10 to 6. And then in February, he gets them 10 a.m. Saturday to afternoon on Sunday. So you lose every single weekend that you have with your sons for the foreseeable future. Every single weekend.